Hi guys, Thogrey here with a new video, and this video will be my Wrath of the Lich King Classic PvP guide video for Season 5, but you could also say for the future seasons, because everything I'm going to discuss right now will be applicable for the future seasons ahead. I'm going to talk about gear, about your stats, about gemming, about enchants, and of course we are going to talk about the talents and eventual comps you can play in 2v2 but also in 3v3. 5v5 is quite expandable, you can play with everyone really. There is a few comps that are maybe better than others, but I feel like I could make a whole video about that. But for now I'm going to focus on the 2v2 and 3v3 brackets. And in general, some tips and tricks concerning holy paladins, and yeah, I think hopefully you will see that as a interesting video. Timestamps will be here below, so if you want to skip ahead or skip before to watch a specific part, you can always do that. Please comment below if this guide helps you with anything. So let's start with gear. I'm going to say that the best PvP gear you can have in general will be deadly gladiator gear. So you could have deadly, you can have hateful, of course, whenever you don't have the rating requirements, but also the arena points available. In general, there's a few pieces here and there that you should not take because it gives hits, and hit doesn't give you anything as a holy paladin. Like, let's say the deadly ring gives you hit. You should not go for that. You should maybe go for another ring. I have like the Wicked Witch Band ring to give me 17 mana per 5 seconds, but you could go for anything else really. There's also a few Darkmoon cards here and there that might be interesting. You could also go for engineering to burst with your people, with your team to kill someone, like a kill target. It could be also very good. But in general, you do you, right? In professions, you can do engineering, you can do even tailoring if you want to have the cape enchant, the cloak enchant, or anything else really. So let's talk about the gear. You want to have as much spell power as you want, as you can, but you should not forget about resilience. Resilience is something that you will have to gem for, but also enchant for. And anything you can have resilience for will be better for you, because if they switch onto you, you should try to survive as much as you can. If possible, just never die. Of course, that's something that is pretty logical, but so many people actually play with PvE gear and they don't understand why they are getting crits for 10k on lava burst. Well, that is pretty much the explanation. You don't have resilience, which makes that critting becomes a lot easier, but also a lot harder. And I would say stats wise, you want to have enough stamina, but you also want to have enough intellect. And the things that is probably the most less spoken about is haste. Haste is something that is very, very important. I'm trying to get some haste pieces, but I need to grind. I want to grind deadly pieces to get some haste. I want to grind some possibilities on my rings. But for now, you will have to get haste on most of your pieces if you can. I would say that in Season 5 it will be harder to get haste pieces on everything, because it's just not the most optimal gear sets that you can have. But in further seasons it will be easier to get haste as a rating for your Holy Paladin. What does do haste? You will have lower GCDs, but also just faster cast times. And Paladins do cast a lot with Flash of Light, and just having a Holy Shock and then having a Flash of Light as ASAP is something that you will have to have with haste, with GCDs being lower. So that's also a good thing. You also want to have crit. Crit is also very important, but I would say that crit just comes naturally with gear, naturally with your talents, and it is not something that you will have to gem for or specifically enchant for specific encounters. You should not do that. I think it's better to get raw spell power and raw haste if you can. And I think the best stat that you can have as a Holy Paladin is probably just resilience. Let's not forget about MP5. You want to have as much MP5 as possible. You also go for Blessing of Wisdom to get yourself a big mana regen just in general, because you want to not go and you will have to play with, for example, if you play 3v3 or 2v2, you want to play with Seal of Wisdom and try to hit as much as you can without being in jeopardy, because you want to regen that mana. And some people don't understand why specific classes or specific holy paladins are not running It is because they are actually hitting you, and they are trying to hit you with just Judgment of Wisdom, plus the Seal of Wisdom, plus they have a Blessing of Wisdom, plus they are also gemmed for MP5, and they generally will not run so you will have to play more aggressive versus those guys. Alright, enchants, I will talk really briefly. You try to get all the enchants that you can have with resilience. So you have 29 spell power and 20 resilience rating on your head. You have the 23 spell power, 15 resilience rating here. You also try to gem 4 resilience. So you have +8 resilience rating, +4 mana every 5 seconds. And you try to do that on all those yellow gems, I would say. So like every yellow gem that you can, yellow sockets that you can actually socket, I would just put a +8 resilience rating, +4 mana every 5 seconds. I do use my red gems as a combination for spell power and stamina, because I feel like stamina does do something for healers. People also just are less likely to turn onto you whenever they see that you have lower HP. They will just see you as a free kill. But if they see your HP is quite high, then people will just generally not go for you. On my hands, also the same, 8+8 resilience rating, +4 mana. You could do, I didn't put an enchant because I'm working towards engineering. So I will put the rocket gloves on the hands spot enchant wise, and it will do loads of damage whenever doing 4 kill goes. Of course, you socket the all stats gems. If you're quite rich, you can get a +4, a +6 gem. If you're not really rich like me, you get a +4 and you're good to go. On your legs, I put a 40 resilience rating, +28 stamina. Again, you want to boost your resilience, but you also want to boost your stamina as much as you can. And on my boost, I do use my 15 stamina and minor speed increase, and also a +20 resilience rating. If you're jewel crafting, you can then get better gems, and those better gems might make you open to other types of gems. So you can go for intellect, you can go for spell power, you can go for stamina or rating resilience gems, and you are also good to go. It's really only preference. I do use my hateful glad ring because it gives me crit and resilience, but I do not use the deadly one because it gives hit, and hit we really do not want as a holy paladin. It's a dead stat. You never really are going to, if you miss a judgment, it is what it is, but you are not going to itemize towards hit, because you are not going to actively always CC. Like for example, a resto druid will have to need some hit, because you want to actually hit your cyclones, and then you will also have spell penetration to actually not resist those cyclones. So it's not the same. You also try to get as much as mana per second as possible, because then you will not run as easily. And I do use 2 Treekins because I am a human after all. So I play with Battlemaster Bravery, giving me spell power, but I could also take the haste one. I'm working towards that too, but it is very expensive honor wise. And a Flow of Knowledge because I want that increased resilience boost, and that chance on spellcast to get a spell power, which is quite juicy whenever it does. It does proc very, very often. We do use the Libram of increasing spell power of Flash of Light. Flash of Light is your main cast. Flash of Light is pretty much the only cast that you're going to do. Holy Light is something you do not want to use because it will eat your mana. I have 14k mana, more or less, whenever I'm fully buffed, and really it's 1/10 of that mana. Even whenever it crits, it is maybe interesting. The only way whenever I see that it's usable is whenever I'm using Divine Favor, and then I see I have time to cast a Holy Light. I will then do that. It will give me mana back, but also a big juicy heal. but I'm not talented for Holy Light at all. I'm also recommending to use more the Holy Shock and Flash of Light combo whenever you're doing Divine Favor. You could do Divine Favor, Holy Shock, you get a crit, and then you get a instant Flash of Light. And that's something that is actually very, very nice and very, very noticeable, because if you want to top someone up, it is very interesting, because with with Sacred Shields, you will get also a crit from Flash of Light more often than not, and you will get a hot, which is based on your mana, on your healed ability. So that's quite nice. Like for example, now it crits. I have like a instant flash of light, and in total it will probably heal the same as a non-crit Holy Light, which is something very noticeable in arenas. Let's talk about auras real quick before we talk about talents. You generally will play concentration aura if you're playing with casters, but also in general I feel like it's one of the best, so you can actually use your aura mastery to fish out those silences and interrupts, because people just don't notice the aura mastery is actually giving you anti-silence and anti-interrupts, so that's quite nice. And in general, you have also talents to actually improve your auras. But you can also play Devotion Aura if you play versus like double melee. Sometimes I play Warrior and Rogues together with a healer. Then I would say Devotion Aura is something that's very interesting, because then you will take less damage from both. And that's something very noticeable in arenas, just in general. When someone does damage, like for example Mortal Strike, you will see that the damage drops with the Devotion Aura. Versus Frost Mages, versus Fire Mages, versus Elemental Shamans. Like in 2v2, if you're playing versus a Warlock, I do use the Shadow Resistance Aura, Frost Aura, and Fire Resistance Aura, but you should not count too much on it, because everyone is spell penned. They got spell pen on every gem, so it does do nothing, and you pretty much are probably better just playing with concentration aura. If they are gemmed not super correctly and they are gemmed for PvE, for example, then it's your lucky day. You could resist a Frost Nova, which is pretty big, or resist a Frostbite, or even an Ice Lance or whatever. It's sometimes it can save your game, but you're actually counting on people not playing correctly, so there is that. Okay, now let's talk about talents. I feel like I talked enough tips and tricks. I could talk afterwards if I come up with new things I want to discuss. I will probably do. So this those talents are really the talents that probably everyone will play in PvP, but also I would say it's something that is specifically for PvP, so you cannot really take it into raids because you are not spec'd into Holy Light, and Holy Light is probably better for raid healing and also tank healing. But in PvP you want those talents, which is pretty much 51 points in Holy and 20 points in Protection. I already played Holy and Retribution, so I had like 51 points in Holy and 20 points in Retribution. The healing is much higher. The crits are also much higher, which is something very noticeable, because you do lose a lot less mana because of your talent, which is Illumination, and you get 30% of the base cost of the spell. That's something very nice to have, but I feel like it's more about BGs, and you do lose like something, for example, Divine Sacrifice. But let's talk about the talents real quick and why I take them. Basically, we are not taking Silver Pure because you're not really a Shokadin. If you want to do a Shokadin, I will make a Shokadin video. If you want to play like a blasting Holy Paladin, you can do that. It is actually very satisfying to play in PGs. And in arenas, you will have to have some specific comps to make it work, I guess with another caster, for example. But I took 5 points in Spiritual Focus. I have 3 points in Healing Light because it does help me with Holy Shock and Flash of Light. We have only 1 point in Divine Intellect because, again, 10 points could be nice, but you are actually lacking points. You want to actually spend 20 points into Protection or in Retribution if you want to play a bit more aggressive. And you don't have the points to actually spend on Divine Intellect. I do play with Unyielding Faith because Fear and Disorient is actually obnoxious, and it is really great to be not too much in CCs. Some CCs can be avoided with Blessing, Hand of Sacrifice, or even the Divine Sacrifice. But whenever you do not, you don't want to actually stay 10 seconds into a fear, which is quite deadly, must I say. Aura Mastery, of course, taking that, elimination, taking that. We do get improved Blessing of Wisdom, which is also good for PvE, I guess. But in PvP, you do want that because you want to have that mana regen. In the beginning of Season 5 and Season 5 as a whole, you will run That is something that is bound to happen. In future installments or in future patches, you will have the liberty to take it out and put it back to Divine Intellect or anything else really. But I'm putting those points with in mind to actually keep my mana healthy, because whenever your mana drops, it means that it is killing time, and every time you're there is someone that is going to drop either from your team or from the enemy team. We do take improved concentration aura. People don't notice, but it is affecting every aura. So while any aura is active, reduces the duration of any silence or interrupt effect. And if you're playing with a caster, for example, or you're playing just for yourself, having reduced effect is quite big. Because again, if you're getting silenced or interrupted, you want to cast ASAP. And if it's not possible, then the possibility to die is very, very big. So that's why I take improved concentration aura. Of course, Divine Favor is something that is quite nice to have because you do combine it with Holy Shock, and then you have Flash of Light. And if Flash of Light crits, you have also a lot more benefits in general. Sanctified Light, something that is actually giving you incentive to not build too much crit because you already have a lot of crit into your build. But naturally, with the seasons, you will have a lot more crit at your disposal. Holy Power, again, you want to have 5% increased crit. Again, you already have innate 11% crit on healing spells. So that's quite nice in general, right? Holy Shock, emblematic spell. We do play with Blessed Life because, again, 10% might not be big, but whenever it does, and it does half, like let's say a Pyroblast, or let's say a Moral Strike, or a Gargoyle Bolt, or whatever, it does feel good because it does give you a bit more time to heal. Sometimes some damage is just not healable. Whenever you have a rogue doing ambushes and it does half the damage of ambush, they feel sad while you are actually laughing at the bank. Sacred Cleansing, which is something that is RNG based. Sometimes it never procs and it is disgusting, but when it does, it gives you actually more breathing room versus those kinds of classes, like let's say DKs, warlocks, and assassination rogues, but they have talents and innate spell penetration to actually counteract Sacred Cleansing. So I feel like with the seasons going on, and they have more spell pen, or their talents are helping a lot, I would recommend to just take Sacred Cleansing out and put it on Holy Guidance. I know that a lot of people love Sacred Cleansing, but spell penetration just ruins it. People say that it does not affect, but trust me, I feel that sometimes they don't resist anything, magic, poison, or disease, versus DKs, assassination rogues, and warlocks. They still have an easiness to actually apply their dots or their effects. So that's why Sacred Cleansing, sometimes I feel like it's useless, and sometimes it is very good whenever people are not itemized for PvP. Which is happening really. You will see a lot of PvE Andes doing PvP just for the fun of it, and they have PvE gear. They might do a lot of damage, but they drop really easily. Divine Illumination, something is very nice. You want to do Divine Illumination if you want to apply Beacon of Light, or if you want to do a big heal, let's say a Holy Light, you want to have that, because again, it does a lot of healing. It refunds the base total of healing, so it halves 50%, so it will be 600 mana, but it will regen yourself the base mana spent, which is 1200. So it's quite nice to have whenever you're doing a Divine Favor for a Holy Light or any other high mana usage spell. Judgment of the Pure is something that some people will not take for some reason, but it's very, very important because aside of the damage that it can do with Judgment, Seals, or whatever, you do get 15% haste, pure haste from your Judgment spells. So whenever you're doing a Judgment, you will have Flash of Light actually having a 15% reduced cast time, which makes it a 1.3 second cast time. So that's quite noticeable, really. And the same for Holy Lights. And in general, if you have more haste and you have that, it will combine into very, very fast healing. Or if you have a Bloodlust on and you play with a Shaman, you will do some crazy fast healing, and nobody's going to drop. Your mana will do, but that's another topic, right? Um, Infusing of light, something that you will have to have as a holy paladin, because it's really, really important. Whenever you crit with your holy shock, your flash of light will be instant and increases in critical chance of your next holy light. So you could also do a holy shock and then a holy light, and you will have more crit chance, although I will not recommend it because it is very mana hungry. Just doing a holy shock plus holy light will just result at 2k mana spent, which is pretty much 10-15% from of your mana if you're not critting. In addition, causes your flash of light to heal targets with sacred shields for an additional 100%. So if you crit your flash of light, it will do crazy healing, because again, it will do 5k crit and then 5k hot, which I don't know if it can crit. I don't think it can crit, but it is insane healing over time, at least. Enlightening Judgments, I do play with that. Again, that's the reason why you don't really want hit, because you do get 4% hit. So you will always have easier times to hit your judgment. It can miss because some classes have built-in resistance versus hit, for example, like rogues. Hunters have that too. Paladins have that too. So you will miss some spells, but that's why you don't really need to itemize hit. And to be frank, there is no real spells that really deserves to be itemized for, except your stun. And having a 30-yard Judgment of Light, Judgment of Wisdom is quite nice for only 2 points. Beacon of Light, something that is very interesting, very strong, but I would say something that can also be your downfall. It is easily dispelled. It is just what it is. Some shamans just have so much of an easy time to dispel it. Same for priests. And whenever it dispels, it does hurt because it's like 15% of your mana at the moment on season 5. And sometimes it is not warranted to do that. You will have to put Beacon of Light on yourself, mostly, because again, if you're playing in 2s, you want to put Sacred Shield on your DPS, and you want to heal your DPS, and as well heal yourself with your Beacon of Light. And in 3s, often than not, by putting it on DPS, it makes it easier to dispel, while if you're putting it on yourself and you're trying to line of sight, they will not dispel it, or they will have to be actively walking towards you to actually dispel the Beacon of Light. So I don't know if you guys understand what I mean. Like, Beacon of Light is really situational. You don't want to put a Beacon of Light all the time because it will eat your mana up. And if you see that it's a purge team, I think the most important fact that you will have to re-put on your target will be Sacred Shield. Sacred Shield is something very powerful, but also very, very prone to be dispelled. And whenever it gets dispelled, it does cost a lot of mana to just put it back on. And whenever you're not using Sacred Shield, you do lose a lot of mana, which is, for example, the hot that you will lose. You will also lose just basic healing, because whenever your protection, you get increased healing, increased duration, but also the amount absorbed by 20% via Divine Guardian. So again, Sacred Shield is something very, very powerful. Okay, let's talk about protection. So whenever you're doing protection, you want, of course, to have Divinity. This is 5% healing done by you, and all healing effects on you by 5%. You have Guardian's Favor, although we only take it for the Hand of Freedom. There is rarely a time where I put double bops on a match. Often than not, we win before or even after. Stoicism is something that is actually the reason why you would probably go for protection. I think Divine Sacrifice and Divine Guardian is super good, also having improved Hammer of Justice. But Stoicism makes your healing and your abilities less likely to be dispelled, and that's very, very big for Holy Paladins, because that's mostly where the utility comes from. If your buff is getting dispelled super easily, it's a shame. And having reduced duration of all stuns effects by an additional 30% is really big. I think it's combinable with your 10% stun duration gem, but I would recommend if you're having problems with mana, you can also gem on the chance on refunding mana or getting mana from spells. So that's something that's also very interesting to have. It doesn't really have the best stats, but if you don't want to play with this turn duration, I would recommend the chance on mana back. One thing you should note, improved Righteous Fury is super interesting. 6% less damage dealt is really noticeable. If you don't have that, you will notice it 6% very, very fast. It does add up on a arena match. Divine Sacrifice with Divine Guardian, that is probably the second reason why you go for protection, because it gives you a second sacrifice, a wall on yourself, but also it breaks CC. So if you're playing Rogue Mage and you know the Polymorph will come, or you know the Sap will come, or whatever, if you're putting Divine Sacrifice preemptively, you will get out of CC, and that's probably the downfall of Rogue Mage. If Rogue Mage don't really apply CC at the right time, they die. And it's not like Shadowlands where they can run away 100 times to regen. That's not a possibility. So whenever you ruin their goes, it really feels like they are going to lose that game immediately. We do play with improved Hammer of Justice, and then you have like 2 points which are fillers, which is toughness. We have 1 point there, and 1 point into improved Devotion Aura, which is quite noticeable too, because 2% is still something very nice to have. So that's pretty much the protection tree. If I want to talk right away with Retribution real quick. If you want to play Holy Paladin with some Retribution aspect, which is more crit, more mana usage, less mana usage, because you get also 10% less mana used on instant cast spells, which means Holy Shock. So that's something very interesting and also very noticeable. Heart of the Crusader, again, you're helping your melee or your teammate to actually do more damage by critting, so that's also nice. Having improved judgment is also interesting. Again, having more judgments means more damage, means also just more applicable like effects, like for example Judgment of Light, and then you switch to Judgment of Wisdom, then you have to switch to Judgment of Justice if they are running away, and it gives you that leniency where you can miss a judgment spell and you can just go back at the offense. We would take Conviction, which is 5 points. We would also take then 3 points into Sanctity of Battle, so you have more crits, again 3%, but also more damage on Exorcism, so you have also time to put Exorcism up. And then you can play with Eye for an Eye if you're playing a lot versus classes. It is quite noticeable as well on a long match, but you also can also play Pursuit of Justice, which does open up a other enchant on your boots. But that's pretty much the talent section. Let's talk about comps real quick. So in 2v2, the best comp, I think everyone knows it, it is Warrior Holy Paladin. Season 5, it is not the best overall comp, I would say, because Warriors needs to scale into better gear, and not everyone has Betrayal of Humanity, not everyone has the full deadly set or whatever, and Armor Pen is not as current as it could be in the next patches, like for example Ulduar, where every piece will give you Armor Pen, or next to every piece you will get enough Armor Pen. You can play with a warrior, you can play with a caster, although I would not really recommend it. You could play, for example, with an elemental shaman, but you will have very long games. You can play with a feral druid, but again, you don't have a fear, so it's a bit iffy. You can play with a rogue, but you will DR stuns. So you see the greatest characters which are very good pairing with a Holy Paladin would be, like, let's say, a Bounce Druid, because you can pop and let him Starfall, so it's quite easy and quite nice to have. Warriors and Unholy DKs, very nice DPSs, and you can support them as much as you can without any struggle. You can play with a mage, but it's also very support. It does need extra CC from you to actually enable, and priests, for example, have a easier time to CC targets. You can play with an enhanced shaman again, but it's not really optimal again. But I would say if you have to choose a teammate, I would then play with a warrior or a unholy DK. In 3v3, you have more choices because Holy Paladins, they can really play with everyone. But I would say the best comps that you can play is TSG. So you play with a warrior, Unholy DK, Frost DK, or Blood DK, doesn't really matter. I just saw Blood DK actually give Unholy Frenzy to the warrior and let him wreck with Betrayal of Humanity and does some crazy amounts of damage. I also saw a Holy Paladin play with a Rogue Mage, but that's not really optimal. Again, you want Fear to actually be super strong CC wise. And yeah, I mean, you can really make it work with everyone. You can also play jungle. You can also play Rogue, Shadow Priest, Holy Paladin as also a possibility. You can also play with a second threat, so you play Retribution Paladin, Hunter, like Cupid, it can work, although Priest is probably better. You can play Warrior Retribution Paladin with a Holy Paladin, but again, you see that the trend is you have less CC, and the more CC you have, the easier you will have to heal, the easier you have to kill the targets, and the easier you have to run away. And whenever you have less CC, it means that you have more pressure on you for healing. Turbo can also make turbo work, but again, Disc Priest is probably the preferred healer for that section. So those are the comps that I would suggest to you guys to play. Of course, again, we are playing Wrath of the Lich King. Just play whatever you want. Play the way you want. You don't need to min-max. Min-maxing is fun to a certain extent, but I think if you want to play a Shokadin, just play a Shokadin, man. Wotlk will be 1 year, 5 years in total. So it will be very short. So please enjoy your time in Wotlk while it lasts. I don't know if it's going to stay afterwards, but if you want to enjoy your time, you should do it right now. If you're hesitating to go Holy Paladin, then just do it. And if you don't like it, just re-roll for something else. But you don't need to hesitate too much because then you will just see the time pass too quickly. So I'm looking for maybe some tips just in general. In general, do not use Avenging Wrath at the beginning of the match because you will be locked out 30 seconds for Divine Shield. So if you are not able to Divine Shield for 30 seconds, people know that and they will just go for you. And you have nothing to protect you except going for a Divine Sacrifice or whatever CD you can use. And the problem is the less CDs you have, the easier you are to kill. And the next Divine Shield that you're popping, they know you have no Divine Sacrifice, you have no wings, you have no Divine Shield, and you're pretty much dead. So that's why do not put wings up whenever you see that you are in trouble or you will be in trouble. What you can do is you can do Avenging Wrath whenever you have used your Divine Shield. So you have 30 seconds to use your Avenging Wrath, and you should use it afterwards because then you are locked out for Divine Shield anyways because of the CD. So you should use that. Also, do not be greedy on Aura Mastery. It is something very nice for your classes, but also for yourself. If you're not using it correctly, it doesn't matter, but if you're using it and people don't notice it and they interrupt their silence for you or for your teammates, they are then screwed. They are going to get killed very easily. Please use Divine Illumination for big mana usage spells. Please use Divine Favor with your Holy Shock because it's a free instant heal on Holy Flash of Light. Please do not use too much Holy Light because it's too expensive. Please have Sacred Shields always up if possible. Please, if you play with Seal of Wisdom, hit your targets to get the mana back, and play with Judgment of Wisdom if you see that it's calm and you don't really need extra healing. And if you need that extra healing, Judgment of Light is quite noticeable if you're playing with dual wield specs. Like for example, Frost DK, if they play dual wield, or Rogue, or Enhancement Shaman, they get insane healing from that spell. Please use your clans a lot, like in abundance. You will need to use clans. Clans is your best ally. It's not like on retail, it doesn't have a CD, and the thing that you're cleansing cost more mana than the cleanse itself. So by itself, you're preventing probably more damage. So that's also very nice. Please use Turn Evil on the pets. I didn't show you Glyphs. My bad, guys. I'm going to show you Glyphs really fast. You do play with Glyph of Seal of Wisdom, so you get a 5% reduced cost of healing spells. You have Glyph of Turn Evil, so you will have a no cost time Turn Evil. Very, very interesting versus Unholy DKs and Warlocks, because that's pretty prevalent on this like season 5. I've always played versus Warlocks or Unholy DKs. Glyph of Holy Shock, again, you want to have Holy Shock ASAP, so 5-second CD instead of 6. We do take Glyph of Blessing of Kings and Glyph of the Wise, but really those two are really not that interesting. So those are the glyphs. Again, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. I hope you learned something today with Holy Paladins. Yeah, let me know if you play Holy Paladin, if you despise playing versus the Holy Paladin. If you learned something, please let me know. Subscribe to the channel if you want more Wrath of the Lich King content, but also Dragonflight content, which is probably 80% or 70% of my channel. And yeah, like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video, and we will catch each other very soon with a next video, which would be a should you main class in Dragonflight. But I don't know which class yet. Or it could be a second guide, which could be the Hunter, because I'm playing a lot of Hunter. And in general, it is a fun class, but very hard to master. So thank you for watching. Have a great day, and be sure to stay safe. See you next. Bye.